Welcome to VSOW. Today we're going deep, really deep, into a story that is both fascinating and deeply disturbing.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's the story of João Teixeira de Faria.
Ah, you mean John of God.
Yeah, John of God as he was known to the world. He was this Brazilian faith healer who gained global recognition.
Right. Millions flocked to his healing center.
He even caught the eye of Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, yeah. Oprah's a big one.
But his path takes a dark turn.
Yeah, a really dark and disturbing turn when hundreds of women came forward.
With some really harrowing allegations of sexual abuse.
It's really quite a story. I mean, the contrast is striking.
The contrast.
Yeah, between the image he built for himself.
This humble healer, a vessel of divine power.
Exactly. And then the horrifying accusations that brought him down.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. It forces us to look at faith.
The allure of charisma.
And that potential for manipulation,
Lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly, especially when people are searching, seeking something spiritual.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to unpack today.
Looking forward to it.
John of God's rise.
His shocking downfall.
And the lasting impact on his followers and the world at large.
Makes you wonder, how did he get to that point?
Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the beginning.
Humble beginnings.
You could say that, yeah. He came from this small village in Brazil.
Where it seems like traditional healing practices were just part of life.
They were woven into the fabric of life there.
Interesting. It's important to remember that in Brazil, spiritual healing isn't something strange or unusual.
You're right.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, it's often blended with traditional religious beliefs.
So I imagine this environment played a significant role in shaping his path.
I think so. Plus, his family had a background in healing.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. And from a young age, there were all these stories.
Stories? Like what?
Reports that he was experiencing visions and claimed to be guided by spiritual entities. He started traveling to different villages, offering healings, doing what he called metaphysical work.
He gained local recognition, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he did. But things really took off when he established his healing center.
What was it called?
Casa de Dom Inácio de Loyola in Abadiânia.
Okay. And that's when things really exploded, I bet.
Yeah, it became this pilgrimage destination for people all over the world. They flocked there.
Seeking his alleged healing powers. That's something I find really interesting.
What's that?
Well, he accepted donations, sure, but there wasn't a set fee for his services.
No, there wasn't. Some people even worked at the hostels in exchange for being there.
Wow. So it was seen as accessible, charitable.
It definitely added to his appeal.
For sure. And his methods, the things he did, were part of the draw, too.
You're talking about the spiritual surgeries.
Yeah.
Both visible and invisible.
I've heard about those.
There are these accounts of him inserting scissors into people's noses, touching their eyes, all without anesthesia.
Wow, that's pretty dramatic.
It was dramatic. Some people swore by their effectiveness.
And of course, some dismiss them as staged performances.
Right. Skeptics would say that.
But the fact that he did them, these dramatic displays, it just added to this aura of power.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't just the surgeries. What about the passion flower?
Yes. He prescribed passion flower to everyone, claiming it had special healing properties.
Interesting. And I bet he made a good profit selling it.
He did. He ended up making a good amount of money from selling this herb.
Passion flower does have calming effects. I know that.
It does.
So was it genuinely part of his healing, or was it, a business move?
It's hard to say. It's hard to disentangle the two.
This blending of spirituality and commerce, it's a recurring theme with him.
It really is. And then, of course, there's the channeling.
The channeling, right. He was known for that.
He claimed to channel these various entities during his healing sessions.
Like who?
Well, including a deceased doctor, for one.
Yeah.
He'd say these entities guided his actions.
Wow. Witnesses have described dramatic shifts in his demeanor.
Oh, they have. It made him seem even more powerful.
Connected to a higher realm.
And, for many, practically untouchable.
Like who would question a conduit for divine healing energy?
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's Oprah.
Yeah.
Her endorsement, featuring him on her shows, not once but twice.
It launched him to a whole new level of fame.
It created what some people call John of God mania.
People were captivated by the stories of miraculous healings.
Oprah's stamp of approval was huge. It exposed him to a massive global audience, especially here in the United States.
It cemented his position as this world-renowned healer.
And I think it really tapped into this idea that he could cure things that traditional medicine couldn't touch.
But, as we know, there was a much darker side lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, and that's where this whole narrative takes a truly chilling turn. 2018, a flood of allegations.
Against John of God.
Yeah.
Hundreds of women.
Accusing him of sexual abuse.
Wow. What a complete contradiction.
Totally, a complete contradiction of the image he'd so carefully cultivated.
It's unbelievable, really. The sheer number of women.
Over 600.
And their stories paint a disturbing picture.
Of manipulation, abuse.
Often intertwined with the very healing practices he was famous for.
It's just so disturbing. I mean, so many of these women, they were vulnerable.
They were. They went to him seeking healing.
Seeking solace, hope.
And they put their faith in him.
Their trust. And it was shattered.
In the most horrific way.
The accusations were serious.
Ranging from inappropriate touching to rape.
And some of these victims were young.
As young as 14.
And then there's his own daughter.
Dalva Texera.
She came forward too.
Alleging years of abuse.
Starting when she was just a child.
It's just heartbreaking.
Truly. And Dalva's testimony, it was powerful.
It was. It shattered this illusion that he was only targeting those seeking healing.
It revealed a pattern of abuse.
Yeah, extending to those closest to him.
A deep betrayal of trust.
Unthinkable, really. And he used these calculated tactics.
To manipulate.
He'd often invoke the well-being of loved ones.
To coerce his victims into silence.
Their fear, their faith.
Their desperation.
He used it all against them.
It's chilling. He basically weaponized their faith.
Their hope for healing.
Their belief in his authority to silence them.
Creating this environment of fear and secrecy.
Enabling the abuse to continue.
For years.
And it wasn't just him.
What do you mean?
Some victims have alleged that his inner circle, his so-called healing guides, were complicit.
In covering up the abuse.
Yeah. They were entrusted with the care of visitors, but instead, they allegedly helped silence victims and protect him.
Wow. So this was a system of control that went beyond John of God himself.
Exactly. This network of enablers allowed the abuse to continue for so long, unchecked.
It's a scary example of how blind faith and secrecy can create the perfect conditions for these kinds of atrocities to occur.
Exactly. And it's easy to see how these women were afraid to speak out. They feared retribution. Some even doubted their own experiences because of his spiritual authority. It's a classic example of how power silences and controls.
Absolutely. And some have alleged that his influence extended beyond the healing center.
You mean with local authorities?
Exactly. It's alleged that he used his wealth and influence to evade scrutiny for years.
So a web of power protected him on multiple levels. Sickening. But eventually the truth started to come out, right?
It did, and thankfully so. When the accusations went public, Brazilian authorities issued an arrest warrant.
Tried to flee, I heard.
He did, but eventually surrendered in December of 2018.
It was the beginning of the end for him.
It was. The whole world watched this revered healer become the subject of a criminal investigation.
And I'm guessing his arrest gave others the courage to come forward?
Oh, absolutely. They knew their voices would finally be heard. But even with hundreds of accusations and mounting evidence, you know what?
He maintained his innocence.
He did. Throughout the entire legal process, his lawyers tried to delay everything.
Oh, I bet. How?
They argued for house arrest because of his age and a supposed heart condition.
It sounds like he was grasping at straws, trying to avoid the consequences.
He was using every trick in the book.
But it's just not a good look, is it?
It's not. Those attempts to evade justice made it even worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows the power imbalance, doesn't it?
It does. Him, this wealthy, influential figure, versus his victims.
Who suffered in silence.
For years.
But justice prevailed, at least to some extent.
It did. In 2019, John of God was convicted. Multiple counts of rape. Sentenced to over 19 years.
Wow.
And that was just the first trial.
There were more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
More cases came to light. His sentence was increased to over 63 years.
That's a long time.
It is. But does it feel adequate?
Considering the scale of the abuse.
And the trauma inflicted on so many lives.
No, probably not. But still a victory for the victims.
It is. A recognition of their suffering.
And validation of their courage.
In coming forward.
Sends a powerful message.
That even those with immense spiritual authority are not above the law.
Exactly. But like you said, no amount of prison time can truly erase the pain.
Right. And here's something else that just adds to the hypocrisy.
What's that?
It came out that he himself sought conventional medical treatment for stomach cancer in 2015.
No way.
Yeah. Surgery and chemotherapy.
Wait, after years of promoting alternative healing?
And claiming to channel these powerful entities.
You're kidding.
Nope.
So much for believing in his own methods.
It really makes you question everything. If he truly believed in what he was promoting, why would he turn to traditional medicine when faced with his own mortality?
Yeah, why? Makes you think, right? About his true beliefs. And to what extent he was willing to exploit people.
For his own personal gain.
It's such a double standard. And a good reminder about the dangers of rejecting conventional medicine, especially when dealing with something as serious as cancer.
It is. But beyond the confirmed cases of abuse, there are even more disturbing allegations.
Oh, like what?
In 2019, a Brazilian activist, Sabrina Bittencourt, claimed to have uncovered evidence of a baby farming operation
What? That's awful.
linked to John of God.
Oh, no.
It suggests a scheme involving the exploitation of young women.
Forced pregnancies.
Yeah, and the sale of babies for adoption.
This is horrific.
Bittencourt claimed these women were repeatedly impregnated.
Until they couldn't bear children anymore.
And then...
Oh, God, don't tell me. Killed.
Yeah, it's truly awful. Adds another layer of darkness to this already terrible story.
I'm speechless. Has this been proven?
Well, these allegations, while very disturbing, have not been substantiated. There have been investigations, but no charges have been filed.
So we have to be careful.
We do. We have to approach these claims cautiously, especially given the lack of concrete evidence.
Right.
But we can't ignore the context. The confirmed cases of sexual abuse make these allegations, even if unproven, seem very believable.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And here's another tragic turn. Shortly after going public with these allegations, Sabrina Bittencourt was found dead.
Oh, no. What happened?
Initially, it was ruled a suicide. There were inconsistencies in the reports.
Okay, and I bet she had been receiving death threats.
She had. So naturally, people started to speculate.
That she was murdered.
To silence her.
It just adds to the whole tragedy of the story.
It does. And it highlights the dangers of speaking out against powerful figures.
Especially those who operate in secrecy and wield control like he did.
But her death remains a mystery, adding to the complexity of this case.
Yeah, it's just so sad.
And the impact of God's actions extends far beyond his own fate.
To his followers.
Those who truly believed in him.
It must have been devastating for them.
Imagine having your whole belief system shattered.
Yeah, they felt betrayed.
Disillusioned, grappling with a loss of faith that it's hard to even describe.
It's such a profound betrayal, and for those who believed they were genuinely healed by him, it must have created an impossible dilemma.
You mean reconciling their positive experiences with the reality of his crimes?
Exactly.
It must have been really difficult for them to accept that the healing, the hope they felt, might have been entwined with manipulation and deceit.
And that kind of realization can lead to confusion, anger, even guilt.
It goes beyond individual followers, too.
You mean the impact on the larger metaphysical community?
Yeah. This whole scandal really shook things up.
I can imagine. It raises serious questions about abuse within spiritual communities, right? And the importance of critical thinking when it comes to these kinds of claims.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in the charisma, the promise of miracles.
But this is a stark reminder of the dangers of blind faith.
And the need for discernment.
Even, and maybe especially in spiritual settings, it's a reminder that the search for something bigger than ourselves can leave us exposed.
Vulnerable.
Yeah. And in those moments, we have to be extra careful.
About who we trust.
Exactly. And about holding those in power accountable for their actions.
Couldn't agree more. It's about being discerning, thinking critically.
Questioning even those we might admire or revere.
Absolutely. True healing, real spiritual growth shouldn't come at the expense of our safety or dignity.
Or our autonomy as individuals.
Right. And it's fascinating how this whole case has spawned these conspiracy theories.
Especially around Oprah Winfrey.
Ah, yes. Oprah, her connection to John of God.
Some people were linking her to those unsubstantiated claims of child sex trafficking.
Using her association with him as evidence.
Exactly. It's crazy.
These conspiracy theories, they lack any real basis, in fact.
But they highlight the dangers of misinformation.
Especially with social media, it's a wildfire.
Things spread so quickly.
It's like a case study in how narratives can be manipulated and twisted.
To fit people's agendas.
And their biases. It's a reminder to approach information carefully.
Be critical.
Check your sources.
And be wary of those sensationalized claims that lack any real evidence.
It's like a reminder within a reminder.
Be careful. Be discerning.
Even when trying to untangle something as complex and as disturbing as this.
It's easy to get swept up in the speculation, the drama.
Stay grounded.
Stick to the facts. the evidence.
It's our responsibility to have these tough conversations, thoughtful and informed discussions.
Even when they're about sensitive and emotionally charged topics.
Absolutely. Because the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is always better than unfounded speculation.
So, when we look at the story of John of God as a whole,
What do we see?
it's not a simple story.
Not black and white.
Filled with contradictions.
Healer turned abuser. Belief turned into betrayal.
Fame masking a very dark reality.
It makes us question our assumptions, doesn't it?
About power, about faith,
About what humans are capable of.
the good and the bad,
It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths.
about ourselves.
About the world we live in.
It's a story that will be debated for years to come.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
And those discussions are crucial. They force us to confront the complexities of human nature,
And the potential for darkness.
even in places we consider sacred.
The need for vigilance is so important to protect ourselves
And each other.
from those who might exploit our vulnerabilities.
For their own gain.
Right.
John of God's story is a stark reminder
Of what?
that we need to be active participants in our own journeys.
Journeys of healing, of spiritual exploration.
We need to be discerning.
Question those in positions of authority.
Demand transparency.
From those who claim to have the answers.
As you continue your own exploration, your search for meaning and healing, remember to be a critical thinker.
Approach all claims, teachings, promises with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Trust your instincts
Listen to that inner voice.
and never be afraid to question those in power.
It's about balance.
Being open to new ideas, but also being aware of potential manipulation,
Taking responsibility for our own well-being.
physically and spiritually.
All said.
And with that, we're wrapping up this deep dive into the complex and troubling story of John of God. If this episode resonated with you, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. We always appreciate your thoughts and perspectives.
There are countless other stories out there. Stories of healing, harm, resilience, and that universal search for meaning and connection. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Thanks for listening to VSOW.